Hello, this is Susan, and this is Christus.
And Mott-ly.
And
we've got a surprise for you.
and we're down for the count.
You never thought you could go back, but you can.
You can go back.
The boys are back. The boys are back in town. And we're just going to sing for you tonight. All the
this is kind of a reunion show. Kind of like, Jefferson Airplane getting back together and doing like really cheesy, lame, shallow dance hits for you. But we're not going to do that. This is how Jefferson Airplane
We're going to play lame, cheesy,
time.
Shallow, hardcore medleys.
With substance, damn it! This is
shallowness with substance.
And we're back together.
And we're joined at the noses.
Indeed they were. That's a little excerpt from a KKFI radio show called Susan. And I have the co-host of that show here. He's going to spend some time with us tonight here in the local showcase. My name is Barry, and I want to welcome old-time KKFI. I shouldn't say old-time. Former KKFI DJ Chris Snipes. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
Doing well. I'm glad we're able to spend this evening. And the reason that we're here is the fellow that you heard along with Chris in that little intro, which you probably haven't heard since that show, have you?
Oh, a few times.
A few
foggy nights somewhere between then and now, yes.
But what we're going to do tonight is pay tribute to a guy who was an artist, a musician, and KKFI DJ, Mott-ly. And I'm going to ask Chris to, for those of you who don't know who Mott-ly was, give us a capsule biography of Mott-ly, because you've been a good friend of his for a long, long time.
Sure. He was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. You want to go back that far?
Yeah, take it to the beginning. Sure.
Okay. Born in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was born with hemophilia. His parents didn't find out till, he was quite a few months old. And complications began to ensue. He had a bad accident. It caused one of his legs to not develop very well, which gave him what is commonly referred to as a clubfoot. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of his childhood was spent being sort of ostracized or, sanctioned off into special trailers reserved for anybody who wasn't like anybody else. And he spent a lot of time in hospital beds and hospital rooms, which, along with his immobility, gave him a lot of time to hone what came to be his artistic skills. And he somehow made it through childhood to get accepted to the Art Institute, Kansas City Art Institute, mm-hmm. which is where I crossed paths with him. And
were you a student there as well?
For 6 weeks, yeah. That's another radio show, though.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah, I ran into him there. He had already been there for a few years and had, he was famous for his physical presence and his fantastic art and just his kind soul. And so we hit it off. We became really, really good friends and lived together off and on throughout the years. And he was a sculptor. He was heavily influenced by Joseph Cornell, who made a lot of little boxes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. There's one at the Nelson Art Gallery.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought you meant a Mott-ly. And I was like, really?
Really?
No, you're talking about Joseph Cornell.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yes, exactly. After the World Sees, the documentary.
Yes.
And then he was also a musician. He sung for a lot of local bands, Tunnel Dogs, Mudhead, later on Penetropolis. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to move back to Lincoln, which is where he came from, and And then he moved back again in the early 2000s and kind of pioneered the Crossroads Art District, moving in the direction that his gallery was in. And it kind of gradually caught up with him, but owned a gallery there for the last several years of his life and then passed away in 2007.
From an infection, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, an in-hospital infection. Yeah, strangely enough. I mean, he had a lot of things going against him, but
yes,
for that to be the reason was kind of ironic.
He was always kind of living on borrowed time.
Yeah, definitely.
And Chris has also done one of the nicest things you can do for one of your friends, in addition to just remembering Mott-ly. He's made a documentary called My Friend Mott-ly, and he's collected together lots of archival films and interviews and stuff with people that know him. It's been shown here at Screenland and Liberty Hall recently, and I believe now it is up in its entirety on YouTube, is it not?
Yes.
How would they find it if they wanted to find it? Is it searched? Is it under My Friend Mott-ly?
Yeah, just, excuse me, search it under My Friend Mott-ly, MOTT/LY, and there you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
How did you guys come to do a radio show here? Because you did a show from, about 1989 through, 91 or 2?
Yeah, and then we came back for a couple of years in the early 2000s. And that was, I think, the first show of that reunion that you just played a clip of.
Just played, yeah. we have some clips from some of the shows we'll play for you tonight.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
We were good friends with Ann Winter, the late Ann Winter, who was, irreplaceable keystone of the alternative music movement in the 80s, beginning in the 80s in Kansas City. She owned Recycled Sounds, and we were friends with her. And me and Mott-ly, we were both avid music lovers, although we kind of, we're different ends of the spectrum, but mutually respective of each other's eclecticism. I don't know if that's a word.
That sounds right. Eclecticism. Yeah.
Yes. Eclecticness.
And so a lot of people hung out at Dirt. It was called Dirt Cheap, also Recycled Sounds, and Annie was really good at turning people on to music.
Oh yeah.
And I assume you guys, of course, hung out there like everybody else did.
Sure, definitely. I dated her for a very brief period of time, right before Kurt, actually.
Oh.
Yes, and then we heard about the community radio station, and that sounded great to us. Like, we could, share this music with people around the community. That sounds fantastic. And so Anne did some magic and got us like a audition or whatever, a pilot.
I think you were on her show at one point,
yes.
Were you not?
Yeah, that's how we started out, actually. And it was pretty well received. So we got our own show, and the rest is history, I suppose.
Yeah, and fortunately there are surviving tapes of some of these shows, which I have sort of gone through and excavated some little sound bites that we'll hear periodically between the 2 hours that we've got to spend with Chris tonight, and Mott-ly too, really.
Yeah.
And what we'll do as well is I want to talk to Chris quite extensively about the film and Mott-ly and radio and various other things, but I also have, of course, a great deal of the music that Mott-ly made with Bang Tales and Mudhead. And we've also got some of his contemporaries, musicians that he either knew or certainly played gigs with or would have been aware of around that era, which we were, of course, playing here on KKFI back then, because we've always been supporters of local music, and KKFI continues to do that, obviously. So I think what we want to do first off is let's play. I think one of his first bands was the Bang Tales, was it not?
Actually, he was not in that band. Archer was in that band.
Archer Pruitt?
Yes.
No, he was the drummer for Mudhead.
Yes. And this was around the same time. Bang Tales kind of bled into Mudhead. As Bang Tales was breaking up, Mudhead was forming.
And Mott-ly did the art for the Bang Tales albums?
Archer did, actually.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh, it looks kind of like. I mean, I saw it, but it kind of struck me as Mott-ly-like.
It does look very. I think that's one of the reasons that they became good friends, is because they were very like-minded artistically and psychologically.
They like the same kind of dark recesses.
Definitely, for sure, for sure.
So let's start. At least let's play a little bit of music for you. Let's play the Bang Tales, and I've got it queued up here. What do you remember? What track it is that you have queued, Chris?
I'm pretty sure it's "Patron of the Arts."
All right, that's a good one to start with. Yes. Let's hear the Bang Tales, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more with Chris Snipes.
Support for KKFI provided by the 8th Annual Crossroads Music Fest, September 7th and 8th at Crossroads KC. Friday night features the Goodfoot, Grizzly Hand, and the Supernauts. Saturday brings you Hearts of Darkness, Starhaven Rounders, Dead Voices, My Brothers and Sisters, Makusa, John Belgi and the Prodigal Sons, Victor and Penny, Cherokee Rock Rifle, The Atlantic, Appropriate Grammar, Tom Hoskins, Dim Peepers, Mikal Shapiro, Casey Rouse, and much more. Tickets and info at cmfkc.com.
Time is when you hit one play.
We're back. This is Local Showcase here on KKFI. I'm Barry. My guest tonight, Chris Snipes, who's done a documentary on the artist known as Mott-ly. And one of the things that you notice in the film when you show some of his creations, one thing you notice is that Mott-ly liked to kind of collect things.
Oh, yeah.
Weird little objects. I imagine when you lived with him, he was always coming home with something.
Oh, man. Or he had it hand delivered to him constantly. Like
people would bring them to him?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because the apartment that I met him that he lived in when I met him, there was a fire escape that went up to one of his windows, which was often more used as the in and out place as opposed to the actual door. Because you could get to that all the time. You couldn't always get into the front door of the apartment, but people were always leaving things on the windowsill there, whether that be a dead bird or some strange piece of glass or a little frame, or people constantly brought him stuff. I mean, there was like a whole motley network of people that would just retrieve things and bring them back to him. But a whole in half of his hallway in his apartment was stacked with cigar boxes that were all very meticulously labeled different things.
Wow.
And it was really incredible. It just blew my mind.
How did he, or maybe I should ask, why did he kind of use a box as a good deed? He didn't do everything that way, but he did an awful lot of, I guess you'd call them installations, that were in various forms of boxes, either cigar boxes or even bigger things. What was it about boxes that appealed to him? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it was something about the finiteness of them, but also taking like a limited amount of space and just packing as much oomph into it, or as much soul into it as you could get. And they were very simplistic, many of them. But
can you describe any of them? Is there one in particular that you could maybe describe to someone?
There's, it's hard to explain. I mean, they would sound inconsequential, I think, to explain. It's better to see them. There's a couple of galleries in town, if any of you are out on First Friday, which is tomorrow, isn't it?
Yes.
That are very apt to have some of his stuff. If not hanging up, then easy to go fetch it and show it to you. Slap and Tickle, which is on 18th Street, right?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's 18th. And then the Late Show Gallery, which is on 16th and Cherry, which are, if you've never been to those galleries, you should go anyway. They're magnificent. They should have some of his pieces on hand. But there's also, can I say the name of a website that somebody? Okay,
sure.
Beth, who was actually the guitarist of Mudhead, made www.motley.com. And there's sort of a gallery of his stuff there, of his sculptures.
Oh, that's a good place to see. Yeah, he would sometimes take bird bones and rearrange them in certain ways. And he's very meticulous. You can tell how he put things together. He didn't do it haphazardly. He had something in mind.
Sure.
Or even if he didn't consciously, subconsciously, it arranged itself in some interesting fashion.
Sure.
And he worked in miniatures as well. I mean, I remember toward the end of the film, there was an object that he made for one of his last girlfriends that, and I don't know if it was ever titled or anything exactly, maybe but it looked about the size of a deck of cards maybe, and maybe you could describe it better than I could, but it kind of opened up in various ways, and it had little secret compartments of which you could pull out a little card of which he had drawn something very finely or collaged it and put little writings on them and things. It's an amazing work. If you see the film, it's toward the end of the film because the film's pretty chronological. But I was just blown away by it. I think you said in the film it took him like a month to put this little thing together.
Yes, and
it's just like an endless piece. There's so many different little compartments and secret little things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. And when he was, I guess when he was starting out, he did some sculptures as well. Do they still survive, or?
I don't know if they still exist or not. A lot of them were sort of along the same lines. I remember there's a lot of pictures of him with this crucifix that he made, and there was some sort of rib cage that I'm pretty sure it wasn't an actual one, but he had manufactured that with a sort of a front part of a skull on it, which looked, much more effective if he was hoisting it on his shoulders, because the two made a good pair, actually. He probably, looked quite a sight dragging that around the campus of the Art Institute. But, so I think that wasn't generally what he did. He did a little bit of painting, too, in Foundation, but mostly it was the boxes, Did
he consider his life to be a work of art itself?
I don't know whether he consciously did or not, but it certainly came off that way. I think because of the juxtaposition of his health, like things could collapse basically at any moment. So I think that sort of put things in perspective for him to not waste a lot of time. I mean, don't get me wrong. He loved to sit around and watch, Andy Griffith's show reruns at 2:00 in the morning. But he was very prolific. He made a lot of art back in the day, and it was just amazing.
Well, he knew. I mean, obviously from when he was very young, that his life was very fragile.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And it could end as easily as him bumping into a light post or something.
Sure.
With hemophilia.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't know, it's you can't stop the bleeding. His blood doesn't coagulate like everybody else's does.
Sure.
So how did he move into musical fields? Had he always written songs and done things like that, or was this a gradual
I think it
process?
was gradual. I think it was like any of us who kind of grew up feeling a little out of place. The first thing that you turn to, and that's most reliable, is music. I know I did. I'm sure it was sort of the same thing for him, maybe for you too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he really got into music, and with that love, it becomes the desire with some of us to actually make some of it yourself. So he took up the drums. He wanted to play the drums.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did. They were driving along, him and his mother, one day, and saw a nice drum set at a garage sale and picked it up, and he wailed. He just got really, really into it. But then he soon found out that if he played drums for any amount of time, he would get bleeds. He would get
his hands.
Yeah, his hands would swell up, and his wrists and his arms would get sore, and so it became like this give and take. Like, do this thing that I really enjoy, but suffer for it almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Gradually, he just gave up, and so he took an easier route for him, which is singing, which I think is probably a lot more cathartic for him too. He's a great frontman. You've seen Mudhead.
There's films in the movie
Yes.
of him doing various, I think, with Mudhead and some other bands.
Mm-hmm.
But was he writing poetry before that?
Oh, yeah.
Already?
Definitely. And he never fashioned himself a writer, but he wrote amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the few things that I saw in the film where you could read the notebooks and such, it was obvious that he had a way with words.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And when you guys did the radio show, which was called Susan, I don't know, was that just an arbitrary name, or was it based on?
It's just like, let's name it like we would name a child.
Cool.
Like
Yeah,
Susan.
it's our child.
Yes.
Did he plan shows like that as well, or did you actually plan them?
Oh no, God no. We had no idea what we were gonna do. We just took much more than we would need, and that left us a lot of room just to flow of consciousness. Yeah.
Did he ever? I don't recall it. I heard probably a dozen shows. I don't recall him ever playing any of his own stuff.
No. There was I think one time when we were thinking about getting a band together, and we just taped ourselves practicing, and we played it on the air. We didn't tell anybody who it was, and we were just going to see if anybody responded to it, and they didn't. That was that.
Maybe they were all too stunned.
That was probably it. Right?
But you can tell, and we'll play you. I think we'll play a Mudhead track when we get into the next musical break here. But I kind of gathered he was writing poetry. And has any of it survived? I mean, do you know where any of his papers are? Or
I don't.
His family, maybe?
Yeah, possession of his family. I know he used to make a lot of, at least for his mother, he would make little handmade books full of handwritten poetry and stuff like that, which I would love to get a hold of and scan. And I would love to archive everything Mott-ly possible, but I don't know how much will happen in my lifetime. But
you managed to get a lot in the film.
I tried.
It's amazing how many films there are of him. And of course, in that, we were talking about this on the way down here, that arts community, a community of artists and musicians that kind of hung together in that era. It seemed like there was a lot of self-documentation going on, which is fortunate.
Sure.
That it still survives.
Definitely.
Did it take you a long time to track down all of these things?
It did. I mean, I started, some of it I had myself because I was one of those people that
you
was,
filmed.
The annoying people getting in people's faces with a video camera, my beta video camera at the time. But yeah, I tried to put out a call to arms, like to get, people to give me their recordings or their pictures or anything, which a lot came to the surface, but I was hoping for a lot more. But I just have to be satisfied with what you have. So I think there was enough, a little bit from every little point in his life that it kind of reassured me that it was sort of a well-rounded picture of, like you you said that you saw more of Mott-ly in the picture than you thought you would. So in the film,
and you had enough to you had enough to pretty much chronicle his entire life.
Sure.
I mean, there's even some fairly early films of him, I think, if I remember right. Maybe I'm just thinking of pictures.
Or maybe my special effects.
That's
to
what
give
fooled
you
me.
the illusion. Yes, they worked. Yeah.
I'm easily fooled. But so how long did this film take to put together? It must have been, I know it was a labor of love, but I mean, how long did it take you to assemble all of this stuff?
I a couple of years before he passed, I presented the idea to him of documenting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, making it a film about his life, because I mean, he's had a pretty strange, wonderful, hard life. And, especially somebody, you don't see many people who go through that much stuff and are able to pull out with as good of an outlook as he had, and especially be such a positive effect on a lot of people around him. Yeah. So he was a little... he had mixed feelings about that. One part of him was thinking that sounds like a great idea, because I think a part of him feared not being remembered.
Like any artist, you want to
of course.
That's why you do art in one way.
Sure, definitely.
It survives you.
Yeah.
It's immortality in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the other part where it came down to actually turning on a camera in front of him and filming where he lived and him unexpurgated made him a little uncomfortable, I think. He was a little depressed at the time that I started making that movie. I mean, his health had really started. Yeah. So I didn't get much done. It got to the point where I just put it on the back burner. It's like, it's just not the right time. He became really difficult to reach, and so I was like, okay, I'll come back to it later.
Was he kind of maybe worried about what some of his friends might say? Probably not. But.
Well, I think, he just had simple things like, keeping clean, keeping his space clean, keeping himself clean, I think he just felt sort of bad and ashamed for what he saw his life had come to, And
a lot of people don't realize that by the end of his life, he had lost both of his legs.
Yes.
And was confined to a wheelchair. For a long time, when he was active around here, he had one leg. He had a leg amputated, his bad leg. But it was difficult for him to get around, obviously, unless someone was with him.
Definitely. And
let alone clean your apartment.
Yes, and he really did not like to impose on people. So things got really bad before he called in anybody for help. So I put that on the back burner, and then I got the phone call that he passed, and I said, okay, well, I absolutely have to do this now because he needs to be remembered somehow.
Yes.
So I started filming at his memorial service at the Remay, and then the fantastic parade that happened afterwards. And that was 5 years ago, and I've been working on it here and there. I mean, more on than off for the last 5 years. Yeah,
and finally this year it was completed. Do you... Are you still getting stuff? I mean, are things surfacing?
I think I've milked and annoyed everybody that I come in contact with enough that they are even if they found something, they're probably not going to tell me, because that I could open the gates again and I could put out a sequel. And
you could do a director's cut.
Yeah, exactly. I think most people consider this a director's cut. Many have stated that they thought it was a little on the long side, but
I didn't think so.
My take is, maybe nothing will ever be documented about Mott-ly again. And if this is the only thing, then I'm going to cram as much stuff into it as possible.
Well, you want to tell the story from beginning to end, and however long that takes is what it takes.
Exactly.
And, my point, my wife did not know him. She has yet to see the film, but she will. But what I said to her after I saw the film was that, you don't need to know or have known Mott-ly to be interested in the film, because his life was so much different than most people's lives. And, a lot of people don't realize that he was someone who was in constant pain throughout his life. Not only that, but he also had to be very careful because of his condition. So he was very fragile as well.
Yes.
And to go through that, day after day, not knowing if that's the day maybe you bump into something you shouldn't bump into, and then you're in the hospital. And the fact that he created so much art that was so wonderful from all that he took all that and synthesized it into something beautiful. It may have been dark, a lot of it, because that's the conditions he was working in, I guess. But still, he took that thing and made something out of it, which a lot of people would have just maybe turned over in bed and gave up.
Sure, for sure.
So every day was like a struggle for him, I think.
Most definitely.
Let's listen to something from Mudhead. I think you have most everything they did, although there is a lost album we'll talk about in a little bit here that maybe somebody listening knows, with the power of radio, maybe somebody out there listening knows where the tapes are. But let's listen to, I think this is the very first single that you guys did, or he did, and I'm going to try to pronounce it. I believe it is Eleutheromania.
Hey, that's great.
Eleutheromania. And what does that mean, Chris? I know you know.
Yeah, I was there actually the night that Mott-ly was going through this huge unabridged dictionary that he had to kind of jar his creative juices into thinking up interesting song titles. And he came across that term, and it means the unnatural desire for freedom.
Mm-hmm. And so then he wrote the lyric based on the title?
Yes, for sure.
All right, let's hear Mudhead. This is the first single from that band on 45 vinyl, by the way, although we have digitalized it for your listening pleasure. Nice little doll recording or something. What was that?
I don't remember what that was. Like one of those things where you pull the tie and like water squirts out or something.
I heard one of your shows where he had some kind of little tiny doll-like recording device that he kept popping in and out of.
Yes.
Like some demented little doll thing. But apparently you could speak into it and it would actually record something, maybe? I couldn't tell.
Yes.
He was obviously fascinated by stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the Local Showcase, by the way. I'm Barry. My guest tonight is Chris Snipes, who has done a documentary called My Friend Mott-ly, all about the artist known as Mott-ly, who was also a KKFI DJ here for quite a while, and more known as a artist, sculptor, and musician as well. One of the things in the film that was kind of intriguing to me was Mudhead started to record an album, and apparently got several tracks recorded somewhere in Kansas City, I suppose. But do you want to tell them the story about that? Because the story hasn't really been resolved, I don't think.
Well,
or it never came out, obviously.
It didn't. I think some of the unreleased things that are on the CD are from those recording sessions.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It started out with Mudhead was playing with Steve Albini's band at the time, which was classically known as Rape Man. And he even flinches a little bit when he says that word in the movie.
Yeah.
God, I was like 17 when no.
Yeah.
Anyway, it turned out that they wanted to play first, and then Mudhead to play last, so they could hit the road and go to Chicago, get the heck back home. And they decided, as they were putting their equipment, Mudhead came on and started to play, and they were like, "Wow, this is really, really cool." They ended up staying for the whole set. And then I guess in an interview that he did for like Flipside or something in the next couple of months after that, he was quoted as saying that, somebody asked him what his production rates were going for since he was getting all famous and stuff. And he said, well, some people, I charge the highest rate possible, and some people I wouldn't record at all, and there's some people that I would do for free. And they said, well, name some of those. And he said Mudhead. And I think somebody kind of called him on that. Really? And so throughout the years, Mudhead pretty much recorded what could have been a whole album or a whole CD. And somebody called him on it a couple of years after that, and he said he would still do it.
In other words, mix it or master it, or
yeah, put his name on it and clean it up a little bit. Right. And I wish I could remember the name of the studio and the person that recorded it here, but it's eluding me now. But
you're in Kansas City.
Yes.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, I'd still be up for that. And throughout the years, it just never happened. Everybody said that the tape was somewhere else, or that Mott thought it got lost during the move back from New York to Kansas City. So many different stories were kind of floating around about it, and I still am not certain where it's at. But fortunately, I had a friend, Chris Batt, who lives in Chicago, because I wasn't able to fly up there myself and do the interview, but he interviewed Steve Albini and brought it up. And he said, oh, yeah, I'd still completely be down for it, which is what he says in the movie. And so we're just waiting for the tapes to surface, and then hopefully somebody will document it, and that will be sort of an extra, addendum to this. Yeah, to this.
Well, maybe the album can finally come out.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody out there listening happens to know about this, I kind of wish this is something. If Ann Winter was around, I bet you Ann would know.
Oh yeah, she probably has them. Yeah. Had them.
Yeah, if you can get anything you want on the other side, I bet she's got it. But if anybody happens to know about that session, it would have been probably, 92 or 3? Or
probably before that, actually. Probably more like 90, 91, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here in KC. And it probably wouldn't have been at City Spark. It would probably have been somewhere else. Either Chapman Studios, or probably not Chapman.
For some reason, I don't think it's Chapman. For some reason, I think it's someplace that isn't around anymore.
Someone that was maybe around at that time recording.
Yes.
Well, if anybody out there knows, give us a call, 931-KKFI. I'll hook you up with Chris, and you can hopefully help us find the mysterious lost Mudhead tapes.
Exactly.
I was asked on Facebook, by the way, where the name came from. They didn't know whether it was from Firesign Theater, or there is apparently an Indian legend that has to do with the latter.
Yes.
Was Mott-ly aware of Firesign Theater? You may or not have been.
I don't know. We never talked about it, but knowing him, he probably was.
Yeah. Okay. So it was the Indian Mudhead, sort of a trickster, god-like figure.
Mm-hmm. That's
interesting.
Who is one of the pictures of that is on my Mudhead shirt that I'm sporting.
You
right
have
now.
a vintage Mudhead shirt.
Yeah, it's somehow held together.
Wow, that's amazing, and you still wear it too.
I can still wear it, barely, kind of poking out at the bottom there. But
were there, his artwork would be a natural thing to put on a T-shirt, I would think. Was it ever done?
Yes, it was actually. It was around probably 90 or somewhere between 90 and 92. The woman that owns Lulu's Noodle Shop and another person owned a record store. I want to say, I don't remember what it was called, but it was across from where the old KKFI studios used to be on Westport Road.
Hold on a second. I've got a phone call that might be about the tape. So let's play another Mudhead track while we talk to this person on the phone and see if...
We'll get back to that story.
Yeah, we'll get back to that story. Don't forget it. I'm going to play you some of the unreleased tracks, so let's do that right now, and then we'll talk to this person on the phone.
Support for KKFI provided by the 33rd Annual Art Westport Festival, September 7th through September 9th in historic Westport. Artists will showcase their original art, unique jewelry, crafts, and more. Details at artwestport.net.
And we're back. This is Local Showcase. I'm Barry. Chris Snipes, filmmaker, former DJ at KKFI, talking about his friend Mott-ly. And we did get a phone call from Tabitha, who knows now, we know now, where the Mudhead tapes were recorded.
Holly Hill Studios.
Yes. And they are no longer in existence, as far as we know.
I've been out of the loop for a long time, so if anybody knows, maybe
tell us.
Yes.
Anybody knows or can put us in touch with the guy that, I assume it was a guy, it might have been a woman, that ran that studio.
It was a guy.
It was a guy.
Yeah.
If you happen to know that guy, call us down here, 931-KKFI or 931-5534. Pass the name on to us, and we will start a detective work kind of thing and see if we can track down the elusive Mudhead tapes. Hopefully they will surface someday, and we'll get them to Steve Albini.
Yes, definitely.
Before he passes away and get him to work. But continue with your story.
The shirts.
Talking about the shirt. Yeah, because his artwork was pretty cool. I could see kids, especially teenagers in that angsty period.
Oh, yeah.
Would love to have some of that stuff. So apparently he did do that for a while.
Yeah. Groove Farm, thank you, Tabitha, for filling in that information, was the place, and they did a series of T-shirts by local artists, and one of those artists was Mott-ly. And I think they made like 5 or 6 designs of his stuff on there. And so, yeah.
That was probably a limited. What did they make, like 25 or 50?
Probably.
Some people still have them around, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I used to have one, and it pains me that I don't anymore. I have no idea where it went.
But is that art still around where the shirts could still be made? Like some art gallery maybe could?
Probably. Somebody between his family and his friends, I'm sure it's got to be somewhere. I thought about that too, resurrecting some of those designs and making Mott T-shirts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did he... that was done while he was living, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And he was definitely for that, I would think, because it's a source of income, which is always necessary.
Yeah, definitely. He could relate to that for sure.
Yeah, he did album covers as well. When I was down at the Marsound Archives, I went down there to, because I know Ann Winter's collection of 45s, which is down at the archives, down at UMKC. Chuck Haddix pulled them out for me when I was there, and he had the original picture sleeves on them, and I said, "Oh, that's Mott-ly artwork on there." And he hadn't known that. They hadn't known that down there.
Yeah.
On at least the first, I think it was actually a little box, wasn't it? Of course.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a box.
Yes, of course. Think outside of the box, Mott. No, actually, think.
He liked to think inside of the box.
Yeah. And he did the best anybody could possibly do.
He could create an entire universe inside a box.
Yes.
And he did that. Do you have any of his box works?
I have a couple of... he did also a series where he did them inside of Valentine's candy boxes.
Oh.
Yes, and they were, of course, laden with carpet tacks and painted black. But yeah, I have a couple of those.
Oh, that must be cool.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Heartwarming.
You need to, yeah, literally. You need to maybe photograph those, put them up on the website.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
But the website, we talked about it earlier in the hour, but in case you're wondering, it's... I would think it's just Mott-ly, MOTT-LY.com.
Minus the dash, yeah.
Oh, just MOTTLY?
Yeah.
.com.
Mm-hmm.
There is a site. I tried to. There's a really cool picture of him, probably in high school. I think that's the main picture on that site. Mm-hmm. And I tried to use it for the show because I publicized the show on the KKFI website, which is kkfi.org, by the way. Mm-hmm. And the picture was too big. It wouldn't like transfer, over. So I had to use the one that I used in there, which is, I think, Mott-ly doing the thumbs up thing. And then on Facebook, I put one with him and a kitten.
Yes.
Nice little cute little picture. Kind of shows you his kind of nice, happy side.
Yeah, exactly.
Which he pretty much, I'm sure he had his surly moments, but he strikes me, the few times that I was around him, he struck me as being almost shy in a way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He was not, at least around me, the few times I was around him, he was not an in-your-face kind of guy.
No, not at all.
He was coping with a lot of stuff, of course, at that point. But I want to talk a little bit more about the film because there was a part of the film, I guess the services after he passed away were at the Rhyme Center, which is I've actually been there. It's the Buddhist center here in Kansas City. It's down in the bottoms, the east side, I think of it as. Was he always a Buddhist, or is this something that he came to when he was later in his life?
Well, when he moved back from New York for his second stint in Kansas City, which was in the early 2000s, if not 2000 itself, I think. I'm a little hazy on anything
Dates,
past last week.
Yeah.
But I was going pretty regularly to the Rime Center, and he, I think he was kind of looking for something to, I don't know, make sense of stuff. He he didn't have a good experience in New York. He really didn't want to come to Kansas City, but he didn't know what else to do. He certainly didn't want to go back to Lincoln. So he came and he saw that I was a little more, maybe just a little bit more centered than I was when the last time he saw me, the last time we were hanging out. And that somehow, I guess maybe he attributed that to Buddhism and meditating. But he thought that he'd try it, and I guess that he liked it. He continued to go after I moved to Lawrence. And
oh, did he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously you can tell by the services that the folks there felt deeply about him, obviously.
Sure. Definitely.
He certainly had an effect on them.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just like a parishioner that sat in the back seat. They obviously knew who he was.
Definitely.
But let's play another. What I want to play now is I'll play a little Mott-ly soundbite, but I want to play something from a contemporary band that was around then,
oh, cool.
The Psycho Welders.
Yes.
And Rhonda Frizzell actually, when I first came to KKFI and started doing shows, I actually alternated with Rhonda on Tuesday nights. She did a show called Lulu's World Beat Cafe, which wasn't really a world music show at all. But it, who said that it had to be, really?
Exactly.
But I want to play a song that has some resonance to Mott-ly because it's a song called Cornell Boxes. And it's actually off of cassette tape that I took and sort of made digital in CD form. There is one, as I said earlier in the show, if you go to the Nelson Gallery, there is actually one of the original Cornell boxes on display there. You can actually see what they are, and you can see kind of. I assume he was inspired by it.
Sure.
Some fashion. But let's play that. That'll get us close to the top of the hour. I want to play you a little Mott-ly soundbite as well before we go into this track. And here's something, and this is also something we played a lot on KKFI. I know I did. Played the Psycho Welders quite a lot. A band that was around for, 3 years, maybe 4, in that era, the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And let's hear that. Let's hear Mott-ly first, though.
Mental rehabilitation. Put on your headphones. Turn up your electrodes. Mental retardation. We have a rebel here in the audience. I sense it.
Self-mutilation hotline, 931 KKFI.
Get out your knives, sharpen your hooks, and let the good times roll.
Baby.
His boxes of teeth and shine.
This one here is about women. Us and women aren't mixing today or yesterday. The doors are red and the bags are all black. The hogs are a howling, I don't even want you back. And I don't know what to do. I'm still loving you. My love is gone away, and I can't wait to see you again. Well, I'm always treating you and doing you right. But when we get drunk, we fight all night. Let's go. And I don't know what to do. Let's go. I better get my boat to hand. My love is gone away, and I can't wait to see you again. Sitting on the porch with my heart in my hand. There's so many women who want this loving man. Look down, yeah, and I'm pushing my luck. Look down, I get killed by a truck. My love is gone away, and I can't wait to see you again. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, my love is gone away, and I can't wait to see you again. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Sin City Disciples, who I'm sure my guest Chris Snipes has seen a time or two.
Oh, several.
Was Mott-ly a fan of that band?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
I noticed Ernie Locke is in the film.
Uh-huh.
We're talking with Chris Snipes, who's made a film called My Friend Mott-ly, and it's a 2-hour documentary about his life, and you can find it on YouTube under that name, just My Friend Mott-ly, Mott-ly. And you can watch it in its entirety. 2 hours. It must have taken you a while to upload that sucker.
Yes, like almost 2 days.
I know it would take me at least that to upload
Yes.
that much. Is it uninterrupted? You did it all in one part?
I did it all in one fell swoop,
Wow.
yes. Yeah.
I'm impressed. You must have some powerful RAM.
Yeah, well.
Sin City Disciples, recorded live, I believe, at the Granada Theater in Lawrence, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard the Psycho Welders doing Cornell boxes before that with Rhonda Francis on lead vocals. Let's take a short break. You're listening to the local showcase right here on KKFI. I'm Barry, and my guest is Chris. My guest is Chris Snipes, and former KKFI DJ, and did a show called Susan, of which we're hearing some little soundbitey excerpts from, and we will hear more of in this second hour. So stick around. More to come. We're still looking for people that know possibly where the lost Mudhead tapes might reside. So if you happen to know those things, call us at 931-KKFI and let us know where they might be so that we may obtain them and play them for you. So let's do a station break.